What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, is Tad the Side. And Tad, unfortunately, we didn't get to this a little bit sooner. We had a few other things planned, but we're doing our 2023 fantasy football season recap in sort of, we're doing a quicker version, but if you want, oh dear Lord, if you want our full take on the 2023 fantasy season, we're going to link it for you in our social media handles. And, you know, we were on our good friend Chauncey Talese, his podcast, LA Confidential, part of the LAFB network. And Tad, we talked for close to 3 hours, right? I think so.
And you promised me it was not going to be 3 hours.
It was a Friday. You didn't have to worry about missing.
I don't care. I was up till 2 a.m.
You also were talking a little bit more excessively
because you made me a host and I hadn't given my opinion in over a week. It's like I need my fix, man.
I don't talk about when you host. I talk about when we're on Chauncey's podcast.
That was the show after I hosted.
That was the show after we hosted. Yes, for sure. But yeah, he had us on to sort of do like a fantasy recap on his show, and he was a great moderator, asked us a lot of great questions with his co-host Thaddeus Klein. And yeah, so we went through a lot of fantasy stuff in that episode. So we will link that for you in our social media handles. You see the ticker down below. Make sure you're following all the social media handles on Twitter, on the side 23, Tad the Side 94, got the show handle at the Side Guys, and on Instagram at the Side Guys. So we will link that for you because yeah, if we're only going to give you a small taste of what was happening in that episode in today's episode, but we're also going to take a very quick look at the 2024 season based on some things that we saw over the course of the 2023 season, a little bit of what we're seeing in the playoffs as well, the NFL playoffs. So, I mean, yeah, this is going to be some trends to keep in mind as we sort of get to the 2024 fantasy draft now. Maybe people are already prepping for that. I mean, there's probably a lot of people out there in dynasty leagues, obviously keeper leagues, name you, probably thinking about strategy already for 2024. So yeah, we're going to give you a quick preview in 2024. So Tad, like we're sort of talking about here, we're going to get into our 2023 sort of like recap here. We're going to go over some of the bigger awards that we want to present to some of these fantasy players. Before we get into all that though, we definitely have to give a shout out to our fantastic partners. Not Spartners. That'd be different.
They might as well be Spartners. They're like the Sparta of online betting.
But there are fantastic partners at Underdog Fantasy. I mean, we've been partnering with them for the past 2 months now, and it's just a great platform to sort of get into two different sort of action here. You get into some fantasy football action, fantasy basketball. They got you all the other sports as well, but they also got you covered on some betting action. When it comes to the fantasy side, they do what's called best ball. So that's what they're known for, their platform there. And pretty much what it is that you draft your roster and you set it and forget it. So it sort of takes all the guessing game out of fantasy football. You don't have to worry about who you're going to pick up off the waiver wire. You don't have to worry about making some midseason trades. You don't have to worry about, here's the biggest thing, you don't have to worry about setting the optimal lineup because Best Ball and Underdog Fantasy's platform will take care of all of that for you. So every single week, you know, you may struggle about like, oh my God, if I leave this guy on my bench, he's going to go off for me. And then the guy that I started is not going to do as well. Underdog's got you covered with their best ball fantasy platform. They'll optimize each and every week with all the players that score the highest for you at every position. So you'll always get the maximum amount of points each and every week. And like I said, you don't have to worry about waiver wire. You don't have to worry about trades. You don't have to worry about start sits. It's just all taken care of. So it's sort of like a very, sort of set it and forget it sort of fantasy sort of action there. So a lot of people like it. There's a lot of people that like the sort of, the managing aspect of fantasy football. So maybe it's not for you, but it could be something fun to try. But I think the biggest thing that me and Tad are huge fans of is the betting side, where you sort of just make anywhere between 2 to 5 different prop picks. You can pick from the NFL. You can go to the NBA, the MLB, MLB. They got all sports covered, and the more picks you make, the more money you can win. That's how much more of a multiplier you get based on how much of you bet you make. I mean, the bets range from anything from, Brock Purdy over 2.5 passing touchdowns to, Justin Tucker, 6.5 field goal, 6.5 fantasy points
Six
for
and a
the
half
kicker
field
position.
goals would be quite the bet.
Hey, it could happen too, based on
That's fair.
offense sometimes too. But 6.5 fantasy points, that was the bet that I saw earlier today on the platform there. So, I mean, they got lots of different props for you. They go to the defensive side of the ball too. They also got the head-to-head aspect where it's like, you got two different teams or even the same team. So you could even be like, who's going to have more receptions, Jayden Reed or Romeo Dobbs? So it's like you got that sort of, head-to-head that you can sort of pick between those two as well. So they got a lot of different options for you. But I think the biggest thing as to why you need to start using the Underdog Fantasy platform, they give us a promo code that will double up on your list deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. Use that promo code that you see on your screen. The code is DESAI, DESAI.
It's our last name, man. How'd you stumble on that?
Well, because I was going to spell it first before I was saying it, and then I realized I say it first before I spell it. So it was a little bit of a stumble
I
there.
would get nonstop crap from you if I did that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're being
Carry
a little
on.
bit nicer about it. But so use that promo code DESAI, DESAI.
go.
You can double up on your just deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So I mean, if you put $500 in your account with your first deposit, Underdog will match all $500, so you can bet with $1,000 on their platform if you so choose. But whatever amount between $10 and $500, they will match that dollar for dollar, so you can get into some betting action or some best ball action. You can also pay to play some best ball and be competitive that way as well. So either way, but Tad, it's been a fun partnership. It's been really great platform, both on their website as well as the app. So I mean, it's been a lot of fun. It's been so easy to do too.
It's been so much fun, and we do a weekly segment on our YouTube Shorts, channel live stream. It doesn't matter. If you go to the LAFB Network YouTube channel, you'll see under the YouTube Shorts section, we'll go with that,
Sure, there you go.
we have dropped our favorite picks week by week, and it's funny because we're kind of flip-flopping. I'll do really well one week, you'll do okay the next, and then, it's going to keep going throughout the playoffs. So we have a video dropping very shortly of our favorite picks of the NFL divisional round bets to make. So be sure to check that out because, we're here for you guys just like Underdog is. So be sure to, support our partners because God knows they have done a great job of supporting us.
Absolutely correct there. So yeah, make sure you use that promo code DESAI, DESAI, to double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500 on Underdog's fantasy platform. All right. Let's get into our today's episode here. We're going to get into, like we talked about, the 2023 Fantasy Awards, just some awards that we want to touch on as far as players that had a good job, had a good season, did not have a great season, who can have a surprise season, rookies of the year. There's lots of different awards that are given out, obviously by lots of these podcasts and, the media out there when it comes to fantasy football specifically. So we want to highlight some of those. So Tad, what's one award or one player that you want to highlight that should get a fantasy award, regardless of whatever it is?
Well, buddy, this was a very long fantasy season for me. None of my leagues went well. I almost had to go to the damn IHOP again or a bar for 12 hours, which is worse in my opinion. So, for a negative season for me, I'm going to start off with a negative award.
Sure.
The biggest bust of this fantasy season. This was actually a pretty easy pick for me. Austin Ekeler.
Yeah, I think with that high round investment, he did not have the season that a lot of people were hoping that he would have.
Not even high round investment, but high pick investment. In most leagues, he was the second running back off the board after Christian McCaffrey.
Easily.
And it's understandable why, is because not only is he a pretty good running threat, but he also had that, kind of dual threat of being a, arguably the Chargers' number 2 receiver with all Mike Williams issues. And so if you're in a half PPR or full PPR league, that increases his value all that much more. These were his stats this season. In 15 games, so yes, I am factoring in his injury, which was towards the beginning of the season, and then he was, pretty healthy for the rest of it. So I don't want to hear any excuses. Well, he was hurt for a quarter of this. Get out of here. In 15 games, he only hit more than 20 points once.
Yeah, that's rough.
Once. But it's okay because it's like, okay, but maybe he finished in that 15 to 20 range. It's not great, but it's better. Yeah, he only did that 5 times. He only did that for 33.3 repeating. How about that math?
Nice.
Of his entire season. That's it. And I double, triple check the math on that. 33%, 0.3 repeating. That's the only amount that he scored over 15 points. And again, for the second running back taken off the board, that is absolutely unacceptable. Some people like pointing out how, quote unquote, disappointing Derrick Henry was. Derrick Henry at least scored 11 touchdowns. He at least got, some, salvation out of what is arguably not a great season. I'm not going to defend him too much, but with Austin Ekeler, it was just an unmitigated disaster. Like, this was easily the biggest bust of the season, especially because, let's go back to what I said before, with him being a receiver, adding so much onto his value, he wasn't that good as a receiver this year. Amir, it's time to play your favorite game. He only topped 5 receptions, meaning he only got over 5 receptions 2 times this season. Over or under?
Over, under. Are you going to do 2.5 or are you going to do 1.5?
We'll go 2.5.
Over. I'm going to say he did it 3 times. I'm going to say over.
Yeah, you were getting too good at this, so I made it mean. It's exactly 2.
Oh, it's 2. God,
it's 2. I tried to give you it out there, but you were the one that forced yourself with the half. But yes, no, he only finished with over 5 receptions twice. Do you want to guess how many receiving touchdowns he had all year?
Probably 0.
1.
Wow.
All year. And again, yes, if he was truly riddled by injuries and, only played half a season, okay, that's understandable. He only missed 3 games.
Yeah, that's the roughest part.
And so I understand that, yes, a lot of this is like offensive woes and, system problems. But at the same time, he's aging up, and this just, to me, reeks a lot of kind of like what we saw with Todd Gurley, where all of a sudden it was a fantasy superstar that just crashed. I want to say down to earth, but even lower, down to hell, within a year or 2. And so it's not only a bust season because he just didn't do well, it's because it puts his future production in serious jeopardy and serious question. Ekeler, I even question if he's going to be a second round or if he should be a second rounder. I'm sure someone will take him in the second round next year, but I question it. A lot of it depends on the coach. If they hire Bill Belichick, I'm like, Eckler's done. If they hire Harbaugh, okay, that's an interesting conversation to have.
I think the more interesting thing to know is just whether the Chargers are going to bring it back, because he's actually going to be a free agent in the offseason. So, whether he'll want to come back to the Chargers with that new head coach, whoever that is, and new GM as well, because remember, they're looking for a GM as well. So, that's going to be part of the decision making, whether just, he's part of that investment or whether they just think that same line of thinking where it's just running backs don't need to be paid that much and we could draft somebody, right? So it's I don't know what's going to happen there. So yeah, depending on where he lands, that could possibly increase or decrease his value as well. So yeah, very interesting situation to monitor with 2024. We're sort of obviously going to take a look ahead of that in a little bit later in the episode, but yeah, maybe we'll bring that up again as far as just our thoughts as far as what he could do in 2024. That's going to be very interesting.
I'm checking my phone because just the way we've been talking about this Chargers coach is going to get hired while we're recording, isn't he?
That's usually our luck.
Yeah. Sure. All right, I'm on it. It's charged.
But I think speaking about luck, I'm going to
Andrew
bring
Luck?
up not Andrew Luck.
Oh.
No, not Andrew Luck. But I want to talk about luck in this sense where, there's a lot of, question marks surrounding this team's receiving offense with their star receiver possibly being out for the beginning of the season. It's who's going to step up in his place? So I'm going to bring up this award, Rookie of the Year. I'm going to go to the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm going to go with the guy out of BYU in the 5th round, Puka Nacua. Now, when the season began, we brought up our good friend Chauncey Talese. He was at Rams training camp, and he was mentioning that Puka Nacua looked like a potential guy who could sort of emerge in this offense. And I identified him as a guy too, but I never brought him up on the podcast because I was like, I don't think it's going to happen until towards the end of the season, maybe beginning of next season. We may see some flashes, but nowhere near consistent where it's this is a guy worth rostering or even keeping on your watch list. Wow, did he come out of the gate swinging? First game, Tad, against the Seattle Seahawks, 15 targets, 10 receptions, 119 yards. He absolutely put himself on the map. Everybody was clamoring to get this guy off the waiver wire. If you were lucky to grab him, you're probably playing for a fantasy title because he was mainly rostered on a lot of fantasy rosters this year who were playing for a championship. He finished the season breaking the single season rookie record for receptions as well as receiving yards. He broke that with 105 receptions, 1,486 receiving yards. He didn't score that much. He only had 6 receiving touchdowns this season, but that's
that's still
not bad.
Yeah.
It's still not bad, especially for your rookie season. That's still very, very good. But just, yeah, this guy absolutely killed it. Like, I mean, he just came out of nowhere. Then you add in Cooper Kupp into that system, and they're just that much more dangerous. Obviously, then you add in Kyron Williams, who had a sensational season as well, but just, man, he finished as the 5th best fantasy wide receiver. Like, I mean, nobody expected that, obviously, from this guy. Just crazy how good of a season that he had. And I think it's pretty much a shoo-in that he should be the fantasy rookie of the year. Like, I mean, obviously a lot of other guys like Bijan Robinson, he had an up and down season. Obviously that's attributed to Arthur Smith and the coaching style there. Jahmyr Gibbs had a slow start to the season and then he finished strong. Sam Laporta would be a very good candidate in this award category as well. But I feel like when you're breaking rookie records, I feel like you're a shoo-in for the award at the end of the season. So, yeah, Puka Nacua, is the pick here.
You'll really like this comparison. It's like when people ask, there's a great argument to be had. Who's the best quarterback of all time? And I'm not talking fancy-wise. I'm talking in general. Who's the best tight end of all time? Sure. Another great conversation because there is no clear answer. But when you ask who's the best receiver of all time, it's like it's Jerry Rice.
Yeah,
exactly. It's Jerry Rice, and like there is no argument. Like some people will say Randy Moss. No. Look at it's Jerry Rice. It's the same thing as like what's the best rookie wide receiver season of all time? It's Puka Nacua. Like there's just no argument. Shut up. Like I don't want to hear about Calvin Johnson or anything like that. Get out of here. Is Nacua by a mile? And I think the thing again, kind of staying more on the field than the fantasy wise thing that's surprising with him is he reminds me a lot of Cooper Kupp, where it's like he doesn't do any one thing really all that well where it's like, oh, that's his bread and butter. It's just like he does everything well enough where it's like he's just an all-around complete weapon already. And like I said, it's just a mid-round pick that came out of nowhere from a small college. It's just like, and yes, BYU is a small college before anyone yells at me. It's Cooper Kupp all over again. And it's just insane that they managed to pull this off. And you're right. Sam Laporta is probably second in my rankings there because he did finish as tight end number 1 this year. But a large part of that is Laporta, like most tight ends, had massive weeks, but then also disappeared. Nacua never really had any weeks. He had it like 1 or 2, but there were there were very few games where, and definitely less than Laporta, where it was just like, that was a bust for me. He was awesome. And I think he's a lock for the first round. I think we also talked about that on Chauncey's podcast where he could go before, depending on how these injuries and this quarterback, situation shakes out. I could see Nacua going before Justin Jefferson in some of these leagues.
Honestly, with the receptions numbers that he had, and obviously with the injury situation that Justin Jefferson suffered this past season, we don't know for sure whether Kirk Cousins is coming back to Minnesota, so that could affect things too. So, yeah, I wouldn't blame somebody for taking Nacua ahead of Justin Jefferson, but yeah, we'll see how that all plays out next year. But one thing I think for sure people can sort of look to is that Puka Nacua is going to go ahead of Cooper Kupp, surprisingly. Like, a lot of people thought that Cooper Kupp would obviously be the wide receiver 1, but with the season that Nacua had, and you sort of saw that Stafford was looking Nakua's way more than Cooper Kupp's way a lot of the times, even when Cooper Kupp was healthy. So, I mean, I think that's one safe bet to make, that a lot of people will be drafting Nacua ahead of Kupp when their drafts come along next year.
Kupp's developed what I call Julio Jones syndrome, where it's like, he's so good, but he's so hurt. And like, you just can't help yourself because the few games he does play, just like Julio Jones and that damn hamstring that bothered him for like half a decade, is like, he's going to kill it in those games. But like, I don't trust him for a full season anymore. And you saw with Julio Jones is that really killed his fantasy stock where he went from being just like Cooper Kupp was an unquestioned, first round receiver to, okay, that's a bit of a risky second rounder, but if he's there in the 3rd or 4th, and I think exactly you're 100% right. That is exactly the territory Cooper Kupp's going to find himself in until he can play another full season. And I mean, maybe that's the good news with this Puka emergence is that he won't be relied on so heavily because I think that's a big reason he kept getting hurt.
That's very true.
So hopefully, because Cooper Kupp's just so much fun to watch.
Oh,
So
yeah.
hopefully he can stay healthy because him, Nacua, who knows with this receiving core and then Kyron Williams stepping up, maybe Matt Stafford kind of looks and is like, maybe we do give it one more go. So maybe even Stafford's back next year.
Yeah, you very much see that. They got a very, surprising offense this entire season, but nobody's going to be surprised by them next year. But you just add on to that with the great job that they did. And yeah, they could be that much more of a dangerous offense and compete for a title next year for sure, especially with them making the playoffs this year. So
I don't know why I gave Stafford such a high pitched voice there, but we're just going to roll with it.
Is that exciting? You got to get
it's that exciting. You just got you bring it up an octave higher.
Exactly. All right, Tad. So let's get to some more awards here. Give me another award and a player that you're sort of matching up here to close out the 2023 fantasy season.
All right, to be honest, I mean, Puka Nacua won this one too, but we can't talk about him back-to-back segments.
True.
So waiver wire pickup of the year is second to Puka, David Njoku.
Njoku's a very good option.
Now, let me explain this because I know a lot of people are going to be like, the hell are you talking about? Because for most of the season, yes, he played like your very normal fantasy tight end where it was like really good, for 1 week and then like 2 okay to bad weeks and then really good the next week. And he was just like any other tight end where it's just that consistency wasn't there, the dependability wasn't there, and he was hugely frustrating.
Yes.
The reason I'm giving him this award is because when he stepped up, when Wacko Flacco came into play, I am so mad they're out of the playoffs. That would have been such a fun story. But the fact that Flacco threw his way so often and he exploded, and here's why he gets the award at the chef's kiss, perfect time for fantasy managers is that was either, depending on your league setup, right at the beginning of your playoffs or right as you were making that final playoff push. And on top of that, when you got into the playoffs as well. And so 4 out of the last 5 weeks, and I say that because he didn't play the last week because obviously they arrested everyone. Yep. But in his last 4 games played of the season, he reached double-digit points in every single game. That type of consistency from a tight end, not named Travis Kelce, which, by the way, even Kelce didn't have that consistency.
He was not dependable this year.
Mark Andrews, who, he was good, but not great. He's kind of dropping off too.
He got hurt. So
but that kind of consistency from a quote unquote non-elite tight end is unheard of, especially that late in the season. That is the treasure trove of pickups. And here's the best part. It's not even I'm out of the playoffs. He was huge for me. And yes, I am biased, which is probably why I picked him because I was in real danger. I was just a game and a half out of last place. Njoku was one of my pickups because Dallas Goedert got hurt. That man helped get me out of the last place race, and I finished just a game short of making the playoffs, which really tells you how my league was crazy this year.
It was wild.
It was wild. Weird. It was really weird. I did not like it. But bottom line being is I went from pretender to contender, and I'm not going to say it was all because of Njoku, but that is such a major hole to fill in your roster where you don't need to worry about that damn tight end. That is okay, hopefully he catches a touchdown this week. Otherwise, I'm screwed. It didn't matter if he caught a touchdown. He didn't catch a touchdown all 4 of those games. He caught him in 3 out of the 4. But bottom line being is Njoku was just such Nacua was a great pickup at the beginning of the season. But what's better than a great pickup is a clutch pickup. And that was the most clutch pickup off the waivers of the year. Njoku, here's your trophy.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too is that we talked about Njoku before on the podcast. That was not only was he scoring double digits, but if I remember correctly, Tad, he had back-to-back weeks where he scored over 20 points, and that's very rare. Depending
on the format, yes,
exactly. Depending on the format that you're playing it, but yeah, that's very hard to rely on at the tight end position specifically. So it's outside of Travis Kelce, even him, it's not always consistently that he's going to get 20 points, but this for back-to-back weeks, that's exactly the type of guy that you want. And you can rely on, especially that's the biggest thing when you need it most. Whether you're making that push for the playoffs or you're already in the playoffs and you need to move on. If you're getting that production from your tight end, it's you can't beat that. You really can't beat that. So, sensational season that he had to close out the season. We'll see what happens next year. I really doubt Joe Flacco is going to be coming back. They definitely have to
come in Deshaun Watson. If they re-sign Joe Flacco, I will lose my mind.
Maybe as a backup. It's a backup. It could be in the cards there.
This is recording. Okay, 20 seconds. If Joe Flacco goes back to the Browns, I will buy a Flacco jersey.
Interesting.
Mark it.
So even as a backup?
Even as backup.
Okay. All right. Because I can see that very much in the cards.
Might be a t-shirt jersey, but still.
Yeah, it's fair. Cause Schurzy, I like it. Because yeah, I think they have to commit to Deshaun Watson, obviously, with all that money that they're paying
You know,
him.
I was thinking, well, and we won't get too much in this because that's
Yeah.
another great offseason topic, but
Oh,
like,
for sure.
what a weird, like, what a Cleveland-esque pickle to be in,
Seriously.
where it's just
Seriously.
like, we brought this guy off the couch and he is 10 times better than the guy we just paid, what, 250 fully guaranteed?
Yep. Quarter of
It's
a
like,
billion.
don't fully guarantee people. You're not the Dodgers. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
I really don't know what they're doing with that move. So yeah,
So
we'll see what
dumb.
happens there. But yeah, like I said, I can very much see a reality where Joe Flacco is backing up Deshaun Watson. And if Deshaun Watson struggles again, we may see some more of that Flacco magic potentially in the season as well in 2024. So I'm going to get to the biggest award that's usually given for the regular season, also the fantasy season here, and that is the MVP. Now, I did initially pick Justin Herbert to win this award, unfortunately, just with the season that the Chargers had.
Not his fault, though. Not
He
his
got
fault.
hurt, before he got injured, though. Herbert was the seventh best quarterback in PPR leagues. He still wasn't the absolute stud that a lot of people were expecting him to be. Like a lot of me and you both predicted that he would have a sensational season. Just unfortunately didn't see that. Injuries to skill positions. Obviously, we brought up Mike Williams getting hurt. Keenan Allen got hurt a little bit later, going with your third and fourth string receivers. Austin Ekeler, who you already brought up, just didn't have a sensational season. They went 5-18 in the 13 games that he started for the Chargers. So, I mean, that's not going to help you either. So there's a reason why he did win fantasy MVP and he did have a great season. But one guy who absolutely killed it this season. I mean, it's pretty easy to pick this one as well. Very much like the Rookie of the Year award. Like, this is pretty easy to pick, but it's Christian McCaffrey. Like, I mean, a lot of people were questionable when drafts were rolling around in 2023. It's like, can he stay healthy? Is he going to be the same guy? Oh my God, he absolutely killed it this season. He had nearly 400 fantasy points in the regular season in PPR leagues. The next closest running back was Travis Etienne Jr., who had 268.7 fantasy points. That is a 122.6 point difference between his point total and second place, which is Travis Etienne. So, I mean, he absolutely crushed it when it comes to fantasy football. I mean, I brought this up before when the trade happened. That was just like his style of play and Kyle Shanahan's offense. Like, it's just the match made in heaven. He absolutely looks fantastic in the system. You can see why he's so effective. Unfortunately, though, even though he was rostered in 58.9% of championship matches, as far as the team that's playing in the championship match in ESPN leagues, he got hurt in that championship game. So unfortunately, if you rostered him and he was on your team, he only totaled 13.1 points in that game. He did score a touchdown in that game, but then he went out in the second quarter in that game against the Commanders. That may have costed you a title. We'll see about that, but he definitely got you to a title, because if you had him rostered, like, I'd be very shocked to see. Like, honestly, hit us up on our Twitter timelines. If you had Christian McCaffrey and you didn't make the title game, I want to see screenshots of that, because, yeah, clearly it's like, well, you also traded him away. So that's
for a good reason.
That's your saving grace there. But yeah, if you had him the entire season and you didn't make the title game, that would be a little bit shocking. So yeah, send us your screenshots if you have him and you didn't make the title game. I'm very curious to see about that. But talk about consistency. He only had 3 games this season, Tad, where he scored under 15 fantasy points. Like, I mean, that's just sensational production that you're getting from the running back position. Like we talked about Austin Eckler's, that high pick investment, that high round investment, but he totally backed it up. Like, I mean, this guy is for sure, like, with the season that he had, he's a clear-cut number 1 overall pick, I think, going into 2024. I think there may be still some people that may enter the conversation of, like, a wide receiver with the sort of the game going in that direction. Maybe a Tyreek Hill, maybe a Justin Jefferson, maybe a Puka Nacua. I don't know. But I think for me, I'm still more of that traditionalist. I'm looking at the running back, and if I have the number 1 overall pick, I'm 100% locking in Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's not much to say here other than I called it. Because, and to be fair, we both called that he was going to be a fantasy stud.
Yes.
But it was funny because in my auction draft, I mean, talk about making a good investment, almost literally. In my auction draft back in August, for those of you not aware, is the way auction drafts work is like, snake order is nominating a player. So like we start bidding on this player.
There's really no point to having an order. It's really just everybody nominates whoever they want.
Yeah. And the nomination strategy is this: you nominate guys that you don't really want, that you hope you can trick others into wanting. So you like have them lose their money faster than until that happens. It worked to perfection for me because I'm trying to remember. I was like third or fourth in the order. And by then everybody had spent, $70 on not Zeke Elliott, but like $70 on, Bijan Robinson or Justin Jefferson or something like that. And then I got to nominate Christian McCaffrey and he started, I was really hoping I waited long enough where his price would go down, but got up to the mid 60s. And finally, which is a lot. And finally, I was like, fine. I spent $65 on him, and I drafted with my friends, and one of them turned around. I was like, really? And it was funny because I was shocked that he was shocked. I was like, yeah, dude, Christian McCaffrey's awesome. And he had a very valid complaint at the time, which was he's not going to last the whole season. Yeah. And it's funny because it was such a valid complaint. That's what ended up biting me square in the ass later on in the season when he went down. I'm like, all right, he's done for at least 4 weeks, and he wasn't done for a single week. He came back the very next weekend. But I freaked out so bad because he does have that history. But he proved it wrong. He proved I can still do this. And it's not even like I said with Cooper Kupp, where it's like, God, maybe they should start leaning on him less, even though maybe they should. But clearly he can handle a pretty big workload. And for a player his size, that's phenomenal. Now, his longevity, like I said, that is a legitimate concern. But for now, yeah, he's a fantasy superstar, the fantasy superstar.
100% accurate there. So yeah, I think for me, like I said, 2024 rolls around. If I'm at number 1 overall, I'm 100% locking in that pick because I think just so good. So good. It's like I still till this day, I'm still like in shock that he is a member of the San Francisco 49ers. Like it's so surreal to me. It's still surreal to me.
We said this a couple of weeks ago on the podcast. I'm still in shock that you somehow traded, you being the 49ers, somehow traded for 2 top 10 picks and did not have to give up a single first round pick in either trade.
Yeah, like the Chase Young trade, like I was so ecstatic about it, but it's like the Christian McCaffrey trade. I'm still, like I said, to this day, I'm still just like, I can't believe he's playing for us. Like that's just so crazy. I love it. I'm hoping he absolutely runs all over the Packers this coming weekend. I'm ready for it. All right, Tab, why don't you close us out with one more award, one more player?
All right, real quick, just because I love this award, both in real life and with fantasy. Everybody loves a good comeback story. So comeback player of the year is Baker Mayfield.
I like it. I like that
so
one.
Baker Mayfield scored 9, and it's kind of the same justification I had with David Njoku, where it's the timing of his performances as well. The last three of his last 5 games of the season, he scored 19 points or more. So that again, with that timing where your quarterback is dependable, he's putting up those points where if my quarterback puts up 20 or more, I'm happy. Even if I lose, I'm like, okay, that guy couldn't have done much more. So it's not his fault. And Baker Mayfield, of all people, is doing that in a majority of the late season. But on top of that, you look at, first off, where he finished in the season. He finished as QB 10. This is a guy that was going virtually undrafted. To play himself into a top 10 finish is insane. He finished above quarterbacks like Tua Tagovailoa, quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, and yes, I know he got hurt, but I don't care, Justin Herbert. All 4 of those guys were very well rated over Baker Mayfield. And if you took Baker Mayfield off the waivers, or if you were crazy enough to draft him, it paid off. Ultimately, if you look at the totality of the season, it paid off. So yeah, again, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but Baker Mayfield is both, in my mind, comeback player of the year, both in fantasy and in real life too. I think he deserves it over Flacco, and he definitely deserves it over Damar Hamlin.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that you said, that sort of just played him into being a top 10 fantasy quarterback, but I think he enters the conversation for the Buccaneers as far as like, do we need to commit to this guy to be our franchise quarterback? So it's like, I think with the season that he had a great game against the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoff game of the wild card run. I know the Eagles didn't play all that well, but you still need to play well when you're beating another team. So it's like, yeah, he still played really well. He made a lot of nice throws. So yeah, I think he enters the conversation for the Buccaneers as far as like, I think we need to commit to this guy because he rallied the troops. He obviously played really well. And I just think that the offense looked very good with him under center, especially as the season went along. So yeah, very surprising to think that's like Baker Mayfield is a franchise quarterback, especially with him being a former number 1 overall pick. And it's like, why are we having this conversation? He should be, but yeah, the play was obviously inconsistent with his time in Cleveland and Carolina and Los Angeles.
How dare you?
I'm sorry.
You bastard.
And then, yeah, now with Tampa Bay. So, I mean, yeah, it's curious to see whether they commit to him, but I think they should.
I mean, and not even going like it's ridiculous to look back at the number 1 overall pick around this conversation, even though it is. But let's not forget that's why that comeback he led with the Rams, even though the rest of the season was kind of meh, is that's why it was so cool. Is because he got picked up out of nowhere, out of pure desperation by the Rams of like, we need somebody who can throw the ball, and then he leads, what was it, like a 98, 99-yard drive or something insane like that. If he didn't not pull that off, it is very realistic to think that, Mayfield, I almost said Manziel, very much on purpose, that Mayfield is in the UFL right now. And that he's not even in the NFL without that one game, that one drive. And so he's gone from one drive, just save my ass, to, like you said, I may get paid on. Now I think he'll get like something like a 3 or 4 year contract, kind of like what the Seahawks did with Geno Smith.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, that's a fair amount of money, but it's not like, okay, that's not hamstringing your franchise.
They're not backing up the Brinks truck on him. Definitely.
Yeah, they're not. Oh no, I shouldn't make that joke. They're not paying anyone $250 million guaranteed. I'll stop there.
There you go.
That's I almost went real dark with that.
Yeah,
but
we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
No.
So yeah, I think that will close out our talk here about the 2023 Fantasy Awards and the fantasy season here. Like I said, we'll share the link with you of everything that we discussed with our good friends Chauncey and Thaddeus on the LA Pod Confidential episode. So yeah, we'll make sure to share that with you so you guys can check that out, because yeah, we discussed things for like 3 hours. So if you want your fantasy fix as far as how we felt about the 2023 season, go listen to that episode. Even if you only listen to like part of it, you'll still get a ton of content for sure.
We also
all 4 of us.
We shared our worst fantasy predictions.
That's true.
And that was a goal. That was my favorite part of the episode. It was painful, but it was funny.
Yes, agreed. All right, Tad. So let's take a look at 2024 now. I know it's a little early, obviously, if you're playing redraft leagues, but if you're playing in a keeper league or a dynasty league or some other league where it's like you're still making transactions now and you're thinking about strategy, you could be thinking about, some players and some situations as far as how the 2024 fantasy season could be affected. Watching the playoffs, Tad, I mean, I texted you about one of the guys that I'm going to bring up, but I'll pass it to you here first. Who's a guy, or like what's a situation that you're monitoring or that you find very intriguing as we sort of head into 2024? And we still got the playoffs going on, but just like when you're thinking about 2024's fantasy season, what's something that's sort of on your mind as far as a situation or an intriguing player, just like whatever it is?
I think this is a guy who's going to get a fair amount of attention this offseason when it comes to fantasy, but I'm hoping he doesn't get overblown. We were also talking about this on Chauncey's podcast where, he said, I called Pollard, being a bust because he was the guy that got overtalked. And I'm a little worried this may be, next year's version of Pollard, but I think because of his situation, he might fly just enough under the radar. But I'm telling you, this guy has real RB1 potential next year that you could get in the middle rounds. I'm keeping my eye on Jaylen Warren. Fascinating name to look out for. So Jaylen Warren, it was funny because everybody was talking about like, he overtook Najee Harris as, the main running back. He may overtake him as the main running back. It never really happened because if you look at the final stats of the year, he had over 100 fewer carries than Najee Harris did. Najee Harris had 255. He had 149. So it's not like, again, with all this this is takeover. I just think he was just so much better with the ball. People just assume a lot more. I see him more on SportsCenter, so therefore he must be the new starter. And that was never really the case. And so you also look at, stats beyond that. He beat Najee Harris in yards per attempt, which is probably the most important stat when it comes to running backs for me. His longest run, 75 yards, by the way. And he only finished 4 touchdowns behind Najee Harris. I know that sounds like a lot, but again, he had over 100 less carries. So 4 touchdowns, not that bad. And look, you also flip it on, the other side of the offense, the passing game. He had 74 targets. And now I know he wasn't able to do much with it. He basically only had 300 yards, only a pair of touchdowns. So he wasn't able to do much with it, but I don't fault Warren for that. I fault Matt Canada first and foremost. And unfortunately, I think my boy Kenny Pickett is toast. Maybe he's a backup in Pittsburgh. Maybe Pittsburgh lets him go. It's pretty easy to get out of these contracts. How about this? What if Chicago trades for Kenny Pickett and a Justin Fields deal, and all of a sudden you have a not terrible backup to Caleb Williams?
It could be interesting. So I don't think they're ready to totally give up on Kenny Pickett just yet, but Mike Tomlin has said, especially with the news coming, that he is going to be returning as the head coach for the 2024 season. He is going to be looking at external candidates for the offensive coordinator position, and the big one, he's bringing in competition for Kenny Pickett. I will say, though, he said these things last year, and we still got the season that we had with the Steelers. So I really don't know what's going to transpire here. But yes, I 100% think that even though Jaylen Warren, like you said, it's like you're watching the game, you're just seeing Jaylen Warren be a lot more effective than Najee Harris. It's just like you'd think they would have made that switch to him being the starter. I think you saw it towards the end of the season. They were giving him the ball a lot more compared to Najee Harris. But just yeah, you see that sort of the numbers there where it's just like he has 100 fewer carries compared to Najee Harris. But I think that number is going to drop down. That range between their differences is going to drop down significantly because I think they're really going to make it more of a split share. Because I mean, just like you said, just Jaylen Warren was more effective with the ball in his hands compared to Najee Harris. Like, I mean, just I don't know what it is, just whether Najee Harris is just not patient enough. He just doesn't look for the holes as easily as Jaylen Warren does. Jaylen Warren's a little bit smaller, he's a little bit shiftier. Maybe that's playing into it. But whatever it is, if they want their offense to be a little bit more dynamic, they need to give Warren the ball a little bit more. So yeah, I 100% can sort of, think that maybe they'll start to use Warren a little bit more, and that will increase his draft stock for sure and drop Najee Harris' stock on the flip side as well. So I like that pick. I like that pick quite a bit here. I'm going to go with the wide receiver here, rookie wide receiver. And this is a guy that we brought up, we're sort of shifting into draft content here, but the Senior Bowl is coming around right around the corner here in just a couple of weeks. And this is a guy that our good friend Will Decker brought up in our live stream last year as a guy that you need to sort of keep an eye on as far as he could be a difference maker right out of the gate, especially if he gets drafted on day 2 or day 3. And he absolutely killed it for the Green Bay Packers. I'm talking about Jayden Reed, the wide receiver, the rookie out of Michigan State. Tad, you're going to have to fact check me on this one, but can you tell me when he was drafted? Because I think I want to say it was like the 4th or 5th round.
I was going to say 3rd round, but I'm on it.
It could be the 3rd round. But
talk him up while I look it up.
I'll get to my notes here. So over the last 8 weeks of the season, Tad, Reed scored 101.6 fantasy points, which ranked him as the 12th best fantasy wide receiver in that span. He averaged 14.5 fantasy points per game in that span, which ranked him as 10th best at the wide receiver position in that same span. He ended up finishing the regular season with the Green Bay Packers as the leader in receptions, leader in receiving yards, and scrimmage touchdowns. 10. He also missed 1 game this season. He was still able to rack up all those numbers, and he only finished behind Romeo Doubs as far as targets by only 2. Romeo Doubs had 96 targets, played all 17 games. Reed had 94 targets, played in only 16 games. So, I mean, you could definitely tell that Jordan Love was looking at his direction, definitely liked him as a target that he wanted to look for when it came to touchdowns, when it came to moving the ball down the field, when it came to crucial downs. He was a guy that he was targeting. I think you head into next year with those sort of numbers that you're seeing. There's a lot of talk about just like who's going to be the number 1 receiver, obviously, with them moving on from Devontae Adams. Like, is it going to be Dobbs? Is it going to be Christian Watson? Christian Watson can't stay on the field. Is it going to be some of these younger guys like Samori Toure? Is it going to be Jayden Reed? Is it going to be Dontavius Wicks? Like, I mean, we had all these names. They're just like, who is going to be the guy? Heading into 2024, I think it's going to be Jayden Reed. Like I said, with just that rapport that you're seeing with him and Jordan Love and just the production that he's leading to it, it's like this is a guy that you could rely on now as far as like, who am I thinking about in this Green Bay offense? Used to be Christian Watson, but like I said, the guy can barely stay on the field. Yes, when he's on the field, he is effective, but now I see him as like maybe a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, as opposed to being like a wide receiver 2 for sure. Maybe a fringe wide receiver 1, depending on where you're drafting him. But yeah, with Jayden Reed, it's like he is locked into being a wide receiver 2 for sure for your roster. I think potentially if he gets more involvement in the offense, you see Jordan Love, he's airing it out. Green Bay had the 11th fewest rushing attempts in the league during the regular season. So you can anticipate that they want to air it out. They want to give the ball to Jordan Love. And because of that, Jayden Reed becomes a very interesting option as far as like one of those, very much like how you're saying, where he could be a middling option that could obviously pay dividends for you to possibly get you a consistent option at that wide receiver position. So Jayden Reed, I like him heading into 2024.
Okay, so before I get to what round he was drafted in, can you, because I just found this out, can you tell me the first college he went to?
The first college?
He was a transfer, which I did not know.
Wow. Okay. I think I remember Will bringing this up, but I am blanking on the college. I'm just going to go with the shot in the dark here, and I'm going to say Illinois.
Western Michigan. If memory serves, go Broncos. I think they're a Bronco.
Yes, they are the Broncos.
Some type of horse. I know there's some type of horse.
It's the Western Michigan Broncos. Yeah, that is accurate, but I never would have guessed that.
So yeah, he transferred after 1 year in Western Michigan. Also, the reason I bring that up is to distract the audience, and hopefully they've tuned out by now. We were both wrong. He was a second round pick.
Oh wow, okay.
50th overall.
Wow, okay. But now you see it. He's living up to that expectation for sure.
And I can't do the math on the spot, but that was either the 17th or 18th pick, because if you remember, last year's draft got thrown all off because of a certain team. Damn it, Miami.
That is true. That is very, very true. So yeah, Jayden Reed, I very much like him heading into 2024. Tad, why don't you give me another player or another situation that you're sort of keeping your eye on as we get closer to that 2024 fantasy season?
Okay, this shows that I'm not biased, because I think whether this guy is on a new team or not, I still think that he is a massive fantasy sleeper going into next year, and that is Michael Pittman Jr. That is a guy I'm what?
No bias because you're a TCU guy and he went to USC? Is that what it is?
No, because he plays for the Colts.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is whether he stays with the Colts or leaves, because he is slated to be a free agent this offseason.
Very true.
Whether or not he stays or goes, I still like his situation. Depending on this is because I'm very convinced just the way he's kind of been interviewing and stuff. You can tell he's getting a little fed up with the Indianapolis quarterback carousel. And I can't blame him, because basically his entire career, he's at a different quarterback every other week. And no, I'm not exaggerating. Every other week, he's basically had a new quarterback. So I think that if he does go to a new team, it's going to be someone with a pretty stable quarterback situation, which is going to increase his stock, because he really only finishes like wide receiver 14 with how good he is. He really should be a pretty solid top 10 receiver. And on top of that, and I will say this, I anticipate he stays with the Colts, because tell me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've never heard, go against me if you've heard otherwise, but I've never heard a non-quarterback say this. He has openly come out and said, I'm fine playing on the franchise tag. It's like, I'm going to go with that. Which makes sense, though, because do you want to guess how much the franchise tag for wide receivers are?
I want to say it's like maybe 18 or 19 million.
You're close. $20 million.
20 million. Okay.
No, I can definitely see why it's like
20
mil. Yeah, I'm all right with that. Like, I'd be okay with that too. But I think that's a good sign too, that he does like it in Indianapolis. So I think that if he goes to a new team, depending on the team, like imagine if he goes to the Bengals. Like, what if he's the Bengals fix to losing T. Higgins and potentially Tyler Boyd as well? That's amazing. Like Michael Pittman on the Bengals would be crazy good. Michael Pittman, not on Miami, he doesn't fit there. But like Michael Pittman in Kansas City, if he takes a little bit of a discount, plays for Kansas City, all of a sudden Michael Pittman way skyrockets up.
Speaking of Kansas City, could you imagine the team that they're playing? Can you imagine him and Stephon Diggs, Michael Pittman and Stephon Diggs in Buffalo?
Because they're going to lose Gabe Davis in all likelihood.
Gabe Davis is a free agent, yeah, but also just with his injuries and inconsistency, it's like, why not get a consistent option of Michael Pittman? You got the all-around threat Stephon Diggs, then you got the possession threat Michael Pittman. Yeah, that'd be dangerous.
This guy almost made my list. He was this close to making it. Could you imagine when he signs with the Jets? Garrett Wilson, Michael Pittman Jr., and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was this close to making my list, but I don't like him right now. So point being though is yes, exactly. Like, you can imagine all these situations where we're like, oh my God, Michael Pittman could do so well in this situation. And it's just like, he hasn't really shown that fantasy wise in the last 2 years, but it's by no fault of his own. So I think that Michael Pittman is like your pinnacle receiver sleeper that you can easily get in the 4th or 5th round. No one's jumping to get, especially after Jonathan Taylor's season. Not that it was a bad one, it just wasn't great. I don't see any Colts going in the top 2 rounds, maybe in the top 3 rounds. So I think that Pittman is an excellent candidate, especially if, God willing, Anthony Richardson can stay healthy. Even if he does go back to Indianapolis, then all of a sudden, his stock still remains as high, assuming again, Richardson can stay on the field.
And it's actually funny that you bring up Richardson, because I was actually just about to bring him up too. And I think that's another reason why Michael Pittman may decide that he wants to come back to the Colts.
I agree.
Or he's okay playing on the franchise tag. Because yes, getting a cool $20 million, nobody's going to complain about that. But I think maybe he has some intrigue playing with Anthony Richardson. Like, maybe the hope is that he is the franchise quarterback. He brings an extra dimension to that offense, obviously, with his running ability. Hopefully he starts to develop the passing ability a little bit. And of course, the 100% big thing, needs to stay on the field more. So
well, I was about to say, you're forgetting one key ability, the sliding ability.
Yeah, sliding ability, availability, if you want to throw in the cliche there for sure. So it's like, I think maybe that's the intrigue as to why he's saying that he's okay playing on the franchise tag. But yeah, 100%. If he hits the open market, he wants to see what's out there. There are going to be a lot of teams going to be asking for his services. So, I mean, we listed a few, but yeah, we'll dive into that further once we get into the offseason and the actual free agency period hits us for sure. But yeah, I do like Michael Pittman. I think he's one of those guys that just like he's highly targeted in the Colts offense. You only imagine if he goes somewhere else, he could see those numbers increase. But yeah, he's a very dependable option that you could get somewhere in that 4th or 5th round for sure. And he can pay big dividends for you.
What about this? I know it's going to hurt your guy that you just listed, but Michael Pittman to the Green Bay Packers.
They don't make the splash move. So unfortunately,
they do sometimes. It's tied like Zadarius Smith and guys like that. They'll do it occasionally.
But they're very few and far between. So yeah, I'd love the situation there if he does go there, but I just don't see it happening with the tendencies that they have in free agency. So
I wonder if Jayden Reed would give up number 11.
I'll see why not. But all right, I'm going to close it out with the team that, speaking of Michael Pittman, it's going to come up here in a little bit here, but I want to close with this one because, Tad, I talked to you during the playoffs when I was watching his play. I brought up this guy in Chauncey's podcast as well, as far as like he brought up this very similar question about like who's a guy that you like heading into 2024 or who's a guy that you're sort of, actually, no, he asked, what's your bold prediction for 2024? And this is what I said. I said CJ Stroud will be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And so he's a guy that intrigues me a ton heading into 2024. And Tad, I texted you after that game with Cleveland, during the game, excuse me, not even after the game. I was texting you during the game. I was like, I'm doubling down on that bold prediction that I made on Chauncey's podcast. I mean, the guy just looked unflappable in that game. He had 274 passing yards in that playoff game against Cleveland Browns and 3 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, and he was just not scared by this very elite level Cleveland Browns defense. You look at the season that he had over the entire regular season, 4,108 passing yards, not 4,180, not unfortunately that much.
That would be
23 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3 rushing touchdowns, all that total to 276.02 fantasy points. Finished with 43.04 fantasy points behind the 5th place finisher, which is Jordan Love. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could finish in the top 5 because, I mean, that touchdown number should increase. And I think with the season that he had to deal with obviously the injury to Tank Dell. Tank Dell stayed healthy the entire season. Maybe we'll see those numbers increase. Robert Woods was just unfortunately not effective. Nico Collins came on strong. He dealt with some injuries. Noah Brown came on, but he also dealt with some injuries. Dalton Schultz had some flashes towards the end of the season. He also dealt with some injuries. So unfortunately, lots of these players for the Houston Texans, as far as their skill position, they're just getting hurt. So you got to look at the fact that's like, hopefully Tank Dell stays healthy next year. They bring back Nico Collins. I think he's still under contract for them. Dalton Schultz is a free agent. I know that. So maybe they let him go. But like we were talking about with the free agency, it's like now you're committing to CJ Stroud, who had such a great season. You give him some more weapons. We saw Devin Singletary totally come on. So hopefully they re-sign him, or if they go in the draft with the running back. I don't know about Dameon Pierce's situation, like whether they want to commit to him. He just didn't look all that effective this year. But you look at the wide receivers, Tad. There's a lot of great receivers that they can add to this group. And you really quickly want to step in here?
So I just looked up Nico Collins' contract status. Next year is the last year of his contract. And you know how much I love contract year players. They go off. Oh, my dear God.
Very true. So that's a very interesting situation there. But you look at the free agency market. These are just some of the names that, you already brought up a few here. Good. Michael Pittman Jr., T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. But Sterling Shepard and the New York Giants, he's a very dependable, cheaper option too. We already talked about on Chauncey's podcast, Calvin Ridley is going to be a free agent. Maybe he decides he wants to leave Jacksonville. Curtis Samuel with the Washington Commanders. He's a very good possession type of receiver. So, I mean, he could bring an extra dimension to that offense as well. And here's the big one. I don't know if they can lure him away, but could you imagine Mike Evans and CJ Stroud together?
That'd be impressive.
That's not good for you as a Colts fan, but
well, at this point, they're going to kick our ass for the next decade.
But for fantasy managers out there, like, I mean, that's a match that just, oh my God, you will be chomping at the bit to draft that stack for sure. Also, you got to turn to the draft because, I mean, there's a lot of great receivers that are coming in the draft. They pick towards the end of the first round with that pick that they're getting from Cleveland. Unfortunately, their own pick will be going to
Arizona.
That's what it was. Yes, exactly. So they'll be going to Arizona. So they won't have their own pick, but they will have Cleveland's pick. So they're picking at number 23. So I mean, you look at receivers in the draft. You got Keon Coleman out of Florida State could
Great.
be in play there. Troy Franklin out of Oregon could
Interesting
be in play
prospect. I
there.
still can't get my finger on him.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you go to the second round, if they let Dalton Schultz go, maybe they look at Jatavion Sanders, the tight end out of Texas. That could be
That'd
a
be
good option,
interesting.
staying in his home state there with Houston. Or this is a guy that a lot of people are mocking to the Houston Texans in the second round. Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. He's a very interesting receiver
That would
there.
be
So,
interesting.
yeah. So you got a lot of great options that you
Or
can
what
add
about
to
this? I mean, they need a big draft. I have to interrupt you.
of course.
It's like you talked about with Nico, and I'm not saying Nico Collins is small for the love of God, but like with Nico Collins and another guy that I'm going to bring up in a bit on this Texans offense. They don't really have that like big possession receiver. A guy we were talking about just our last episode, Johnny Wilson, would be a fascinating fit here.
That would be very interesting. That would be very interesting for sure. So, I mean, they got a lot of options as far as free agency, as far as the draft. But yeah, you get this guy, maybe one or two more weapons in this offense. And CJ Stroud is definitely just going to take it to another level in 2024 season. So, yeah, I'm targeting this guy as my starting quarterback. But I think you can wait on him, fill up the beginning parts of your roster with some strong running backs, some strong receivers. And then you get a guy like CJ Stroud maybe in the 6th or 7th round. Man, that's a sneaky diamond in the rough there with CJ Stroud. So I very much am very intrigued with him heading into 2024.
I'm glad you said 6th or 7th round because I want to caution our viewers and listeners against. I really shouldn't say this because my friends listen to the podcast, but yes, I'm right there with you. That this is my kind of mid-round target guy of like, no one's really thinking about him as QB1 until they have to. Meaning like somebody in your league is going to have like their initial plan and then that's going to go to shit. And then they're going to like start looking at Stroud pretty hard. So like, yes, I would wait on Stroud. I'm not, neither one of us are saying go for him 1, 2, 3, or even 4. But come the 5th round, if you still don't have a quarterback or if there's no good backup plan there, I would just go for it. Like, just go for it. This is the type of gamble that pays off because it's not just Stroud. And that's the thing is like, this was a very painful research session for me because it's the players to look out for in 2024. Rodgers almost made my cut. 2 other people almost made my cut, and they're both on the Texans. One was Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell is a fascinating receiver, especially with the injury stuff.
Yep.
I think he's going to, now that's a guy you can sleep on for a while.
Oh,
I think Tank Dell's really going to slip in drafts and then explode. So he's also very high on my list, and every word of this is causing me pain. Another guy is Devin Singletary. I almost picked him for comeback player of the year because he came back from being kind of like iffy. And then once Dameon Pierce got hurt, by God, he took full advantage of that and, became one of the bigger, monsters, more consistent monsters in fantasy football. Well, I think he will repeat that exact performance. No, but my point being is this Texans offense is hugely loaded. And, it really doesn't matter about Dalton Schultz because all you really need is a big athletic tight end. You already named 2 of them in the draft. That's a dime a dozen in free agency. So they can, because they use Dalton Schultz somewhat. I won't even say a fair amount. That feels like too much. But it's just like, find a big, fast white guy, you're going to be fine. And they can find that. So, CJ Stroud, he's going to be good. And I hate life. Please God, let Will Levis bust. If Will Levis and CJ Stroud both work out, I'm done.
Well, you can still hold on to hope that Anthony Richardson, like I said, big thing can stay
healthy.
Would
if he stopped breaking everything.
He's looked great because he's looked great when he was on the field, but just that's the thing. Can he consistently stay on the field? So we'll see what happens.
That's a whole other fantasy conversation because if he can stay healthy, that's interesting with all those rushing stats.
Oh, no, believe me. I very much like it. I'm very much intrigued with Anthony Richardson as well. But guys, it's still very early. We're definitely making that transition to the 2023 draft talk for sure. So we'll save some of that 2024 fantasy draft conversation for once we get closer to the summer months. But yeah, we definitely want to close out the 2023 fantasy season with some of those awards that we brought up and give you a quick preview with some of the things that we've seen over the last handful of weeks, definitely in the playoffs when it comes to my pick and CJ Stroud. I just really doubling down on that one. That's a prediction that I'm going to keep going.
Probably the best one of the night. I'll give you that.
So definitely we're going to be giving you our talk and our analysis and all that stuff with the fantasy draft once we get closer to those summer months. But I mean, hey, if you need our advice now, you see the ticker down below. I caught it at the end again, unfortunately here, but
Still
make sure you're make sure you hit up on our Twitter handles there. I got up at the side 23, 10 at 10 side 94, the show handle at the side guys, and of course on Instagram at the side guys as well. Hit us up with your fantasy advice or fantasy, whatever sort of advice that you need when it comes to fantasy football, whether it's like dynasty advice, whether it's like who you think about for keeper stashes for 2024. Are you starting up a league and you're trying to figure out your draft situation for your startup dynasty draft? Whatever it is, we're still your fantasy guys for sure. But I think the big one too, with us transitioning to the draft, send us all your draft questions as well. We're here to help you with all that stuff. We're diving into our homework now. So me and Tad are going to be heavy looking at some tape, reading some articles, what have you, to get ready for the Senior Bowl live stream, as well as give you a preview of the East-West Shrine game, and of course, everything that follows after that. So make sure you're subscribing wherever it's to your podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Let's run the LAFB Network website as well. All tons of options for you. Just hit that subscribe button. Always be up to date with our podcast. You're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And guys, please, please, please support our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the professional level, and the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level. They're giving you a lot of great content for sure. We've already brought it up, LA Podfidential with our good friend Chauncey Talese. We were just recently on Salute to Troy podcast with our good friend Al Rowe. So, I mean, lots of great content from them. Make sure you're supporting them as well. But guys, to everybody who's already watching the videos, who's listening to the podcast, who's interacting with us on social media, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing, guys, to support us, we can't thank you enough.
And this may be the long waiting game, because this becomes a lot easier once the draft is over, especially in May. But if you guys have any offseason topics you want us to talk about, best and worst coaching hires,
we'll definitely get into that in the offseason for sure.
I'm trying to think of other ideas, but honestly, this is why I'm reaching out to you, is because if there's an offseason topic that you think of that, I'm not going to promise we're going to discuss it, but I guarantee you, especially come May, because we get real lazy and we run out of ideas real quick in May. So after the draft, but even before, sometimes we want to take a break from the draft, especially as April gets closer. We get kind of sick of it, and so we usually take like 1 or 2 episodes where we're like, all right, no draft stuff, none of it. So if you guys want us to talk about something, shout out your ideas, like Amir said, right below. Oh my God, that's what it feels like. Right below where it says Amir Decide 23. I got so excited. Tad Decide 94. Hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, the YouTube comments. We've been checking those out as well. If you have any ideas of what you want us to cover in the offseason, we're here to make the stuff you guys want to listen to, what you guys want to watch, because you have supported us so massively. Just check our viewer count. Our last video is doing fantastic. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And please, as always, stay safe, everyone.